Oh, there it is.
There we go. All right. Hi, everyone. And thank you for having me. I am Nora Chahbazi. I am the founder of EBLI. And my story is just, I started out as a neonatal intensive care nurse. That's what my education is in. And I did that for about 10 years, around mostly in Charleston, South Carolina, also up here in Michigan and Kalamazoo. And moved back to Michigan after having been our family in the military. My ex-husband was a doctor in the Navy, and we moved back here to Michigan, my home state, from Guam. And my second daughter, I have 3 girls, my second daughter's literacy struggles in the mid-90s is what led me to changing the whole path of my life to literacy, not purposefully at all. She was a very good math, very high, definitely would have been diagnosed with dyslexia if she'd ever been tested for it. Very high at math, very creative, very hands-on, very all kinds of, if you look at a list of all of those things. And that, as far as these are, things you want to look for as far as dyslexia. She's great at memorizing words for spelling tests, great at memorizing books. Couldn't read a sentence of them if you pulled the sentence out. Definitely could not read books or anything that she had not seen before. And she'd been taught traditional phonics in Guam, a program called EBLI at this tiny little Christian school right on the ocean. And then when she came back here, she was taught whole language, kind of a balanced literacy before they called it balanced literacy thing, more of a whole language thing. And in second grade, her testing showed her in the 98th percentile in math and a year below grade level in reading on the Iowa test that they did. So that's what started my journey into this. And a lot of things just kind of snowballed, and I taught her how to read very quickly. And after researching, and everything I saw was traditional phonics or whole language. And I read for many months, about 6 months, until I found the book, Why Our Children Can't Read. Actually, it was told to me from a former professor at Michigan State, and who had a reading center and was remediating kids very quickly. And so I learned about that, taught my daughter to read. My then husband wanted to open a wellness center, so he rented a building. And he said, because after I taught my daughter, I was helping other people's kids just volunteer because it was so much fun. And he said, why don't you do this in, my wellness center? And a few weeks before his wellness center was to open, he had nothing in there and it fell through. So I had a whole reading center. So all of everything that's kind of happened with my journey has been somewhat accidental, but I always call it divine intervention, is what has led this whole thing. So I then got trained in the program called phonographics, which is very one-on-one focused and really very much, focused on decoding. And I learned a lot from them, which was awesome. And I was a trainer. I became a trainer before I even opened my reading center. And I did that for about 4 years. And as I was coaching in schools and all, and EBLI phonographics was not really conducive to teaching with, especially classroom teachers, but even intervention teachers in a group or whatever, I kept learning because I had this reading center that was kind of a learning lab and evolving. And I really wasn't teaching phonographics anymore because I wanted to expand to include handwriting and spelling and writing and vocabulary and comprehension and all the things, everything literacy. So I quit being a phonographics trainer. And then 2 months later, a county and a foundation offered to train anybody in their county, have me train them. And they would pay. And I'm like, I don't have anything to train them in, quite frankly. So that's how EBLI was born. So, and then that was in 2003. So I've been training teachers. We now have teachers in over 40 states and 13 countries who are trained in EBLI. And it is what I was put on this earth to do. I know it's very much a passion. And I always keep that fire in my gut of my child's suffering, which was pretty significant, even by second grade, and how that was alleviated by, instruction that worked, and really trying to make it so that other kids don't experience that suffering. And the teachers teaching them don't experience their suffering either. And the parents, there's just suffering all over the place. So my work with this is very heart-centered and very passion-focused, and very much, the name of my reading center is Ounce Prevention Reading Center, where we see people one-on-one. And then, then we have EBLI, which is evidence-based literacy instruction. So my goal is just to do all that I can to help advance literacy and highest level literacy for all with greatest ease for the people who are teaching, whoever they're teaching. So yeah, that's my story. And I'm going to share my screen and get started on, I made up some slides so I can tell you based on your questions that you guys asked. I tried to make a quick presentation on that. And then of course, please ask questions in the chat. I would love it. I love people's stories because I find them fascinating. So if you're open to sharing, you know, why you're here or a little bit about your story in the chat, I would really appreciate that too. And also I'm assuming most of you, except for Julie, I know you're in Michigan, but most of you are from Iowa, but not positive about that. But we're starting to train a lot more teachers, actually, Iowa. And I was just telling Amy, Wisconsin, we're getting a slew of teachers in Wisconsin. So the good old Midwest, I'm in Michigan. So we like that. Our Midwest girls and boys getting highly literate quickly. All right, so I'm going to share my screen. And I also have a new Mac. I'm fairly new at this, so please be patient with me as let's see how this is going to work. Ta-da. All right, I don't know. Do we want subtitles? What do you think, Amy? I don't know how to not subtitle it. Let's see. Oh, okay, good. Is that showing full screen? Oops, I can't hear you. Can you hear me? You can't hear me?
Sorry, I can hear you.
Okay.
We can see like your next slide coming up.
Okay, hold on.
I don't know if that matters to you or not. But...
About slideshow. Yay, team. Okay, very good. Thank you. All right, so EBLI, I'm going to talk a little bit about what EBLI is and how it is different. I'm not sure how much you guys do or don't know about EBLI, but we'll share some so that you can learn. And again, the welcome, at least introduce yourself with your name and what you do, and whatever else you'd like to share. I thought this was a pretty cool picture. This is something that's an ESSA document that is very new. Actually, Julie, who is on here, towards the end of it, it shares some of her data in it. But this is one of the pages from it, and Amy is going to share this with you. It's an overview, and the researcher we've got some research happening on EBLI this coming year, and also an EIR grant that's just finishing being written. It's a federal grant this week, as a matter of fact. But this page we loved, so be sure to look at that. And look at all of it, of course, but that really kind of tells about what does EBLI look like when you go to learn it as a teacher for your students or a student or child or whoever it is that you're going to be teaching. And they just did a really excellent job. I said to the researcher, how'd you do the best job of anyone, including me, of describing EBLI? And she, as we've been on these calls for our schools that are involved in the research, she's heard a lot about it. So be sure and take a peek at this because it's got a lot of good stuff in it. And I wanted to share that with you. So I'm going to go through kind of the who, what, where, when about EBLI. So who is it for? EBLI is for anyone from a preschooler to a senior citizen and everyone in between. We have taught EBLI one-on-one. That's what we do at our reading center. And a lot of people, private interventionists, do one-on-one, and even some in schools. The majority, small group intervention in schools or special ed or whatever. And ideally where we would like EBLI to be is whole class instruction, K-3 especially. So I call that kind of putting the fence at the top of the cliff instead of the ambulance at the bottom, where we have to do a lot of repair from the trauma, from the habits that are not serving kids well, that type of thing. But EBLI is for everybody. And if you've seen The Truth About Reading, down here on the right corner is David, who is the 62-year-old gentleman, he was then anyway, that I taught for that movie. He was filmed for the movie The Truth About Reading too. So, and what is it? EBLI is not only unique, I'm going to be talking about structured linguistic literacy and linguistic phonics and all, but EBLI instruction, even beyond that, is very comprehensive. It was important to me to have, as you can see in the red, these are the 8 components of EBLI that we teach explicitly and systematically and scaffolded to move so that all kids have complete literacy, right? So not only do we do the 5 essential components of literacy, which phonemic awareness and phonics, of course, but fluency, vocabulary, comprehension. We also explicitly and systematically teach handwriting, spelling, and writing in EBLI. And it's tremendously integrated. So every EBLI activity teaches probably 4 to 6 of these red topics in one activity. So it's not like we have some time where we teach phonemic awareness and some time where we teach phonics, or in the same exact activity simultaneously, we will be teaching spelling and phonemic awareness and phonics and vocabulary and all that type of thing. So giving the kids a really good foundation and then applying it. We're very big on, we're going to teach you this and we're going to put it into reading. We're going to teach you this, we're going to put it into writing so that kids can see the application right away and why we're doing what we're doing. There's a lot of other things, which are the black print that are about EBLI, cognitive processing training, the research on learning, all kinds of things that are integrated into also the activities of EBLI that are beyond just, of course, these components of literacy. And so the foundational approach of EBLI, which what I learned and why our children can't read and what we can do about it, by dear Diane McGinnis, who became a friend of mine, and I adored her and was very sad she passed away about a year ago. But the key is the linguistic phonics, as she would call it. A lot of people call it speech to print. I have gotten away from doing that because it causes a lot of confusion. Is it the Louisa Moats book? Is it just spelling? Isn't that what that is? So trying to get to a term that is not as similar as everything else, to cause confusion. Speech first is a lot of times what I talk about, what we do with EBLI, but structured linguistic literacy, there's a group of about 8 of us that get together once a month and try to help spread the word out to the world, really, about what this approach is and how it's different than other traditional phonics instruction. Okay, so structured linguistic literacy, and I'll show you the definition of that. So basically what all of these things mean is that the focus, the lead of the instruction, instead of being the letters, which is almost what all phonics instruction is the letters lead, and the letters are the first thing in the focus. What leads with this type of approach is the speech, the words, what we're saying, and then pulling the sounds apart, matching the spellings to them. So basically it's spelling or encoding to decode and read. It's teaching reading and spelling at exactly the same time, which is pretty grand, which helps really accelerate the instruction too. So this approach is really critical. And it's what, even though in traditional phonics and structured linguistic literacy, the content, much of the content will be the same, the way that it is taught and delivered is really significantly different. And that's really hard sometimes to wrap your head around. So I'm going to do my best to, do that. I've given Amy's got some links that she's going to share too, that have videos of a kindergarten classroom that shows all of the different EBLI activities and how they're scaffolded. So it's like less than 10 minutes. So you can kind of see it in action. And then there's one for our intervention training tracks. There's 3 tracks in there. And this was the video on track 2 and 3. So you can actually kind of try to see it and see what's going on. And I gave her some other documents too that tell you each of the components in the classroom training as well as the intervention training. So you can, it's very, very, very challenging. And I was thankful because in this group where we're talking about structured linguistic literacy, and there's other providers in there too, but also practitioners and others that are just interested, but everybody says, you really just can't explain this in words. It's very challenging. I've been doing this for 25 years now, and I've really never got it down to where I'm 26, I guess, where I'm able to explain it in a way that, seems to be really concise and able to comprehend it. So I keep working on it though. I'm not going to give up. So structured linguistic literacy, this is the definition that we came up with, and how is this different? So with this, our linguistic phonics, our speech first, the instruction is accelerated. It moves very fast. It's systematic and explicit, and it's integrated. Okay, everybody, whoever, there's several different programs, of course, and systems who teach this, and all of them, the integration is also key. And it's speech first instruction for both spelling and reading. So that was that definition, where speech, again, is leading the instruction, not the letters. That's a key difference and key component. Where do we teach this? Tier 1 instruction is my favorite. to teach it in a whole class, ideally kindergarten, but we have K-5 instruction for whole class instruction, intervention, any tier 2 or tier 3, and all of these kinds of things, whether you're a Title I teacher, private practitioner, special ed, homeschooling, summer schooling, anybody who's teaching any student one-on-one or small group, or even whole class, EBLI works with. In some of our schools, we'll be teaching it in classrooms and also in remediation, which is really great because it's the same skills, concepts, and information, but it's different number of repetitions, okay? And a lot more focus on being diagnostic and prescriptive based on what specific learners need when we're doing that tier 2 and 3. So when do you use it? Amy and Julie did this amazing webinar that I was just watching before you guys came on, because we're going to share some of their quotes from it in some posts that we're doing. But you teach EBLI all day long. And that's what Julie, I was just watching that part of it when I came over here, that she was saying, I teach EBLI, at calendar, when we're doing science, whenever there's reading, writing, and spelling, you teach EBLI. So, and it doesn't matter what you're reading. A lot of times, especially at our reading center, parents will notice their kids start to read signs when they're driving home, or they might read a menu when they're going out, or something, start to read the words on their birthday cards. So any kind of reading that's out there is what we want to use our EBLI strategies with, and we do. And why? Pretty much all of us know the why, that we've got a really significant literacy lack in our country and really in our world. And so really to make this so that we've got all or most of that pie being blue. So we've got a lot of room for it wait, no, not blue. We don't want blue. We want orange. Sorry. We want the orange. So all the pie orange in this, so that we get to 95 to 100% of our kids really being highly proficient at reading, writing, and spelling. How do we do this? With EBLI, the skills of blending and segmenting and phoneme manipulation that are embedded again and integrated into pretty much all of our activities. The concepts, which I'll talk more about, of up to 4 letters spelling a sound, and that we have the same sound spelled in a lot of different ways, and then the same spelling or grapheme can represent a lot of different sounds. So those are concepts that about the English language, that when you understand those, it's much easier to manage, as well as a multi-syllable strategy. And then at specific activities that are meant to make teachers' life easier and students' literacy acquisition faster, and keep lifting them up. And then strategies that we use within our instruction. We use a model of gradual release with EBLI, where when we do after just a little bit of instruction, about 6 hours of instruction, where it's orientation and theory and background, the people who are teaching it, whether it's a homeschool mom or a classroom teacher, a special ed teacher, they go right into doing learning about the activities, the teacher learning, and then student instruction with the kids. And we gradually release both the teachers and the students. We teach the class at first, whether you're teaching a whole class or a small group or one-on-one. We have videos that we'll teach, and the teacher will facilitate. And then we graduate as they're learning, because at first it's a lot more of a heavy load for them to learn how to teach these activities. Because again, with EBLI, it's not about the content that's being taught. It's very, very, very much about the process of how you're delivering it. And it's very scaffolded. So once people say, well, how do we know where to start? You start at lesson 1, because lesson 2 is built on lesson 1, and lesson 10 is built up from, all the 9 lessons before it. So it's built upon each other with that interwoven, all the essentials of, reading as well as writing, handwriting, and spelling. So it spirals and gradually releasing, so that you model and make sure that both the teacher and the student have a firm grasp and understanding, and moving slower, and then speeding it up and fading away to more independence for both. Whoops, excuse me. The instruction with EBLI starts simple to complex, a lot higher and starting in 2nd grade than normal. Typical with traditional phonics, actually, but still more simple, and moving to more complex, and moving from concrete to abstract. So we model, we do explicit instruction, then we do some practice, all right, and repetition, and then application into reading and writing. So how do we do this? As I said, the scaffolding and coaching with how to release that happens in the system. It also happens on our Facebook page and our monthly coaching calls that we do for teachers that we teach. So that scaffolding is huge for teachers and it's huge for kids. Really, when we're teaching in a way that follows, what the research says we need to do as far as how we learn, it doesn't matter if we're 50 or if we're 6, right? That the process is the same. So we think of that with both teaching the teachers and teaching the kids. Immediate error correction, we really celebrate errors because it's one of the best ways to learn. And we teach teachers how to fix them very respectfully and very quickly, and even in a class of 30, because so that your kids are seeing the last thing imprinted on their brain is the correction. Oh my gosh, here I am. And then the gradual release is what I talked about too. So all that's baked into EBLI instruction. And then the reciprocal learning, because reading and spelling use the same process. And we teach reading and spelling in the same word, in the same activity that we're teaching when we're doing EBLI, so that the kids can understand spelling always lags behind reading. And if you're doing it in remediation, depending on the age and depending on the habits that they have, been using previously, it may lag behind even more. But my daughter, for example, learned to read very, very quickly, but it was 2 years before her spelling, like she consistently spelled was correctly. And especially if they're in school and their misspellings are okay and not corrected, and then you're doing correction of spelling, like I was at home or in remediation or something. So the more that correction is happening and putting that focus for the kids to understand what you're doing here for reading is the same you're doing for spelling. What you're doing for spelling is the same that you're doing for reading. Higher cognitive load for spelling. And these are just the concepts of English that all of us need to know and be able to apply to be the very best readers we can be. I've always been a very good reader, great reader, I would even say. I'm much better, also a speller. That's kind of been my jam, reading and spelling. But after learning this and teaching this way, I am a faster reader and a better speller. And I can read a very thick book on an airplane, and read it a lot faster than I used to, as far as that goes. So understanding in English, when we say a sound, okay, whatever sound it may be, a sound can be spelled with one letter like this n and on, or 2 letters like the sh and she, 3 letters like that 3-letter I spelling an I, and the 4-letter spelling for A and 8. So up to 4 letters can represent one sound that we say. And then we have the same sound. All of these are words that have the sound z, but they're spelled differently. So whether it's a vowel or a consonant, almost every single one of our sounds can be spelled in multiple ways, and typically probably about an average of 8 to 10. Some are only 5, some are 20. The sound sh, actually there's 20 ways to spell sh. And then the next concept that can really put a wrench in things if you don't know it is that in English, again, vowels or consonants, the same exact spelling, letter or group of letters, can represent different sounds. So and for this letter here, so the letter O can represent the sound in on, or O in no, oo in do, aw in dog, and in sun. There are actually more, but those are the top 5. So the same spelling, different sounds. Understanding that makes you move to self-teaching and statistical learning much, much quicker. And then having a multi-syllable strategy. Many learners who move into multi-syllable, especially if they're strong memorizers like my daughter was, they can get to 2-syllable words a lot of times, a lot easier, but 3 syllables, the wheels fall off big time and they really don't know what to do about it except for panic. So we moved to a lot, even in kindergarten, quite honestly, moving a lot, I mean, not right at the beginning, of course, but by the middle of the year, a lot into 3, 4, 5 syllable words to teach them how to manage that, both for reading and for spelling. So these concepts unique to English are things that we need to know about our code to be able to manage it. And a good example of this is how on the left, if we're going from the letters are leading with instruction, and we looked at this first set of words, and we're doing rhyming, our kids, if you have a child that has been taught letters first or traditional phonics, and you ask them about these words, if they rhymed, they're going to say yes, right? Because they look the same, and they're taught that the look and what the letters are, at the end, after the first letter, basically, or the last two after the vowel, those are going to rhyme because we're going from what the letters look like. But if we say these words and we're paying attention to what we're hearing, so we've got tomb, comb, and bomb. So it would have to be tomb, coom, and boom, or tome, comb, and boom, or tom, com, and bomb, right? So it's like, wait a minute. If we move past those CVC words with rhyming, which is where we start with, of course, and we have those letters leading, there then can become a lot of confusion with the letters first instruction with this. And then also, especially kids who struggle, if they look at words like this, like Shel Silverstein books, that type of thing, all right, greet, cheat, and sweet. If you ask kids to look at these and tell you if they rhyme, they're going to be like, no. But if we're paying attention to what our mouth is saying, what we're hearing, they definitely rhyme, even though they look very, very different. They have 3 different ways to spell E, 2 different ways to spell t, right? At the end with this eat, which is what we're hearing that's the same. So we don't want to teach reading as a visual process to be the most efficient. When we go from a speech first and what we're saying, it makes it much more efficient to manage and make sense. Spelling and writing is very critical in EBLI. This is my daughter's, this is why I'm here. This was up on the wall in her 2nd grade class in the 3rd week of 2nd grade. Had a pretty picture, so I knew it was about dogs. And I thought I was going to throw up. Here she was gifted and talented because she was so high in math. And I'm like, what happened to my kid? She always got all the words right. And I actually have her 2nd grade stuff here. Even multi-syllable words on spelling tests, but a lot of times she couldn't spell the words in writing, even that same day. So this was up on the wall with a lot of other kids whose writing was looking pretty much the same. And this is when I knew we really, really, really had a problem, because I can read this kind of stuff now pretty easily, and you guys may be able to too. But the spelling, and we ask this a lot of times of teachers and of parents, how's their spelling? Not in a spelling test, but when they write to you. That's a great indication. Their spelling is going to be worse than their reading, but we know when the spelling looks like this, it's definitely impacting their reading. They can fool you on the reading a lot of times, especially if they can go from memory. But so we really want to go for accuracy, not just with reading, but also with spelling and also with writing. We need some capital letters here, right? And some punctuation would be nice, and all of those types of things. So we're really, and again, integrating this instruction that's building constantly with EBLI. Another place that we're pretty obsessive about is handwriting. And we integrated, of course, into our lessons. We also have an activity that we do separately. This is some pictures. These are actually, what am I doing here? 3 weeks apart. When COVID hit, we had parents calling and crying. We had teachers calling and crying because they weren't allowed to teach, and parents weren't getting an instruction. So from the end of March through into May, twice a week, I would teach a group of kindergartners, a group of 1st graders, and a group of 2nd graders and above online. I would have between 100 and 125 kids on live from all over the world. Never done anything like that in my life. So I kind of was just winging it. It was exceptionally phenomenal. And the kids who had been in special ed got out of special ed. I mean, it was just crazy what happened with that. But anyway, with our handwriting process, I thought, I'm going to try and do this handwriting process with these kids. And so they did on April 8th, as you can see, they did a pre-assessment, and every session, twice a week, at the beginning for a few minutes, we would practice handwriting with the prompts that we use. And then I asked at the end for them to write, and I also gave the parents the process to do at home. And then 3 weeks later, I had the kids write the alphabet again. And you can see this little one right here, Caitlin, is 3 years old. You can see her writing. She's like, she has an idea for sure, but huge difference right there, right? And huge differences. These are different kids from preschool to up to 2nd grade that you can see the differences in the handwriting, and not just the volume, but also the quality of their handwriting. So we incorporate that also. So again, we're real big on accelerating literacy acquisition. So we want to move kids far and fast. We want to be effective, do it really well and efficient. We want to do it without wasting teacher time, without wasting kid time, so that we can get to what we all really want to get to, right? Which is reading real books and writing, real stuff. And so making that process move faster. So with EBLI, it naturally just feeds into the whole orthographic mapping process to help learners make that happen just quickly and very well. And then also when we prime the pump with these kids and they understand those concepts in the application that's all the way around all of the components of literacy, they move very, very quickly, like almost scarily quickly for many of them, most actually, to the self-teaching. And where you're going to learn how to read the best once you have that foundation is not more instruction. It's not more explicit instruction. It's going to be in the context of books and the words in books where all those patterns are and all of those concepts that we've taught, they get to practice. It's kind of like if your child is learning to ride a bike, you hold the seat so long, but once they start pedaling on their own, you don't run after them and grab the bike and pull it back, say, wait, let me hold some more. We've got to let them go on their own. They may be a little bit wobbly. They may even fall over. But as they do that, they get better and better and better. And it's the same thing with the reading where they just like, whew, they take off. So the statistical learning, the self-teaching really kind of snowballs as they've been taught the foundational pieces. And it's different, again, with age. It's different if there's been a lot of struggles. It's different if kids have, various things that's, where they need more repetition or different inefficient habits that need to have more focus to switch them to efficient habits, all those types of things, because all humans are different. So, but overall, in general, moving them really fast. We are very big on lightening the cognitive load. So we don't want to overwhelm kids with too many words, too much extra stuff. We want to teach them the process and then get them to using it, right? And then giving corrections and all of that. So interleaving, where we don't teach to mastery with what we do before you can move on. We do teach mastery in time, right? But we're going to spiral that instruction so that there's explicit instruction and application. And even though we haven't taught you that this is the spelling for shh, we've taught you that 1, 2, 3, and 4 letters can spell a sound, and that there's many ways to spell a sound so that SH is shh. And then when you get to that shh in nation, we just say shh there. And like, okay, cool. So you can move in that interleaving of this, and then you're going to eventually teach that explicitly, but you're continuously interleaving, even across the grade levels. In kindergarten, with what you're going to teach, there's going to be overlap when you get to first grade, because we're going to continue to interleave, because research shows it's the best way for our brains to learn. Okay. Set for variability. We start right from the beginning where you can pull a sound out and push a sound in. We do this morning message at the first activity, or very close to it. In kindergarten, where we're modeling, where they're mimicking, where we're parroting, so that they get lots of exposure and they understand. They say a different sound, you can pull it out and push another one in. When we do phonemic awareness, all those things. So we set them up to be really successful for set for variability. And it's spectacular how well that works too. And pattern recognition. The brain learns best by recognizing patterns, and we point them out with sorting several different spellings for the same sound at one time, looking at the patterns, applying it in other activities, applying it in text to read, and in spelling in writing. So, and really capitalizing on what our brain does best and naturally. So all of those things. And then again, integrating so that they can see we don't have to do this and then this, but they can see how all of this relates to each other, which is very cool. Some other things that are critical for accelerating our student gains and making teachers' lives easier, quite honestly, is one thing that I'm real big on, and having been a NICU nurse with babies with a lot of brain bleeds and all kinds of things that would typically cause problems later on in life. And then having those reunions every summer that we used to have, the picnics with the kids, then they're 3 and 4 and 5, and looking at how their instruction, that many of them, especially born really prematurely, and the supports that they have gotten and how this cognitive processing can grow their brain. It's always fascinated me about what we do can help grow. Teachers are like neurosurgeons without the scapula. It's crazy. So you don't even need to go into surgery and you can grow their brain. And for me, that's huge. So EBLI, and it's kind of like the pill in the pudding. I don't really talk about it in the activities, but there's not one step in any of the activities that you do in the process that you do them that's not purposeful. There's no wasted time at all. Some people might think, I don't know why they're doing that one. Let's not do that. There's a purpose for it. A lot of them are cognitive processing to help with that growing that brain. Okay. The fast-paced instruction, EBLI moves very quickly. It moves quickly as far as the scope and sequence, and it also moves quickly when you're teaching them in the moment. And it's very interactive, and it's very multimodal, and the kids really are participating the whole time. You're not doing much talking at them. You're doing a lot of interacting with them where they're doing something. The support is very purposeful. We gradually release that support. We want to fade away from those supports as they get more adept at what they're doing. So that's kind of like the art of EBLI. And then the immediate error correction, so that even though they struggle, we also really push struggle. Have some struggle. We're going to help you so that you have the correction with when you make an error, because that just keeps the bar raising higher, faster, which is cool. Multimodal. So you're seeing, you're hearing, you're saying, you're touching. Sometimes kids will lick a marker. Then it's, got that too. We don't really, encourage that. But all of these things, because it's multimodal, it helps this information move more quickly into their brain. All right. And very hands-on and very, again, little talking. We think of ourselves as more showing. Of course, you have to talk a little bit, but oftentimes if we talk, the more we talk, the more we interfere with our kids' thinking. If it's extraneous information that's not exactly what they need to get the job done of what they need to do. Okay. And extra noise. Now, snapping, clapping, tapping, singing, there's a place for all of those, though in the reading instruction in EBLI is not it. Okay. So we take away literal noise as well as extra word, extra stuff, cutesy things. Like somebody said to me in a training probably 20 some years ago, can I teach my cat and my kite? And I'm like, I don't know what your cat and your kite is, but I'm going to tell you something. I'm 100% sure that you don't have to do that to teach them what they need to learn to read. However, if you have a lot of extra time on your hands or you want to do some extra fun things, I think, I still don't know really what the cat and kite is, but you could, but she has this whole elaborate, visual thing with a cat and a kite, and somebody else with their pirate. They had a whole pirate week. And I said, you can use the pirate week, but again, think about what, and it's fun and you can do fun things. But when you're doing reading instruction, we want to give them what they need to get the job done that they need to do. And that's where we're really focused with EBLI. And what I mean when I say eliminating noise, if it's not necessary to teach anybody to really be proficient at reading, we don't have it in EBLI. You can do those extra things, especially if you're teaching all day long, of course, in classrooms and stuff, or homeschooling, put those fun things in there. But when you're teaching the reading, stick with that streamlined approach is how we go. So there's a lot of things that we have and that are out there that take you into a deeper dive in EBLI, Instruction Linguistic Literacy. Some of on our website at ebli.com, you can see up here at the top of our little menu, there's webinars, and I just gave some visuals of some that are some of our favorites. This one is on there. Jen Newman, like Amy and Julie, is an educator out in Boston who has taught EBLI, and she did balanced literacy and she did traditional phonics, and then she moved to EBLI, and she just did it's so fun. Her webinar along with Amy's and Julie's and all of them from this Distinct magazine, which is another link I could have shared, but they're all on the Science of Reading YouTube page. So if you type in the Science of Reading, what I should have learned in college, you'll get to all of those. And those are really exceptional too. As far as like, what does it look like application for a teacher? Because we all want to know that too. This is when maybe the most recent one I did, I'm not remembering, but how does EBLI incorporate structured linguistic literacy? And I've given some people tell me that's one of their favorite ones as far as helping understand. There's videos in it, which is always helpful too. And then speech to print versus print to speech. This I did about a year ago, April, I think it was. And we have had traditional phonics people flooding to us since this, several things have had it, but this print to speech one was one that really got a lot of interest in what is this thing? So that's another good one. And all of those you can find on our webinar page also. And this one over here on the left is also on the Science of Reading page. So checking those out. Some other resources to help you learn, the EBLI community Facebook page. I don't know, this is actually the speech to print thing, but at the top under these features, I think it is, there's a post that I love a lot where people share their stories about their journey and all of that. So that's a great thing there. And just a lot of people asking questions. Why do I keep doing that? I apologize. And exploring, as far as EBLI. So it's a very safe place, very respectful. I'm real big on being respectful and kind and welcoming. And there's no bad questions for sure. So that's a good spot where you can come and learn more from people who, it's about half people, maybe a little bit more than half people who actually teach EBLI, and the others are typically exploring and wondering, what this is all about. This Dyslexia Explored is another one. You can go to YouTube, and if you Google Nora and Darius or whatever, this Dyslexia Explored, you can find that. And it's also in the EBLI blog, which is on our EBLI website. And this gentleman is from Scotland. And what was fun about this is it's just so authentic, I think. He asked me if I said, what are we going to talk about? And he's like, well, let's just wing it. You want to? So, I didn't know the man. I didn't know anything really about him. Somebody who's trained in EBLI said to him, you really need to do a, podcast with her. And he asked me. And so literally besides this little email exchange, and I never had a chance to look at what he does or anything, we just hopped on and went with it. And in the middle, I did this impromptu EBLI lesson, and people really speak highly of that as far as helping, especially people who are familiar with more traditional phonics, dyslexia instruction, that type of thing. Really found that beneficial. So you may find that too. We also have some free lessons. They're intended for upper elementary to adults for several reasons, but I had a first grade teacher who sent me a picture of her class doing that. I'm like, okay. I wouldn't really probably recommend that. She was an EBLI teacher, but if you want to know yourself, what does EBLI look like? One of our EBLI team members here that has worked for EBLI forever, her mom actually just did these and really kind of had all of this release of a lot of trauma around reading stuff and being teased in school and all that type of thing. But gosh, Nora. But her mom is in her 70s and literally just last week did these. We have, I think, 16 or 17 around there. They're going to be 20 total. And we drop one a week. And we're going to be using these in jails across the country. They're going to be used to teach inmates too. So if you want to practice it and be a student, I say go there and check them out. And that'll give you a good idea of what it looks like. It's very much a slice of EBLI. It's like 20% of me teaching the kids, but you can see what the gist of it, I guess, and learn some fun stuff. So use those. Okay. And that's all I've got for this. I will stop sharing. See, I think. Okay. So Amy, do we have any questions? Excuse me.
We have one in the chat. Liz, do you just want to unmute and ask it, or I'm happy to ask it for you?
Yeah. Okay. So we have Wilson language, and so the kids get a solid base of phonics in the classroom. How would this be compatible with that? So if I did that as an intervention, if I did EBLI as intervention, I just want to know about the compatibility on that.
What is it, a tier 1 program in the classroom?
Yes, foundations.
Foundations, yes. Mm-hmm. Foundations. Well, that's been something that's been happening really the last 2 years, where a lot of places are using foundations. The approach is definitely different, right? It's going to be, so there may be some confusion with the kids. Depends on where they're at with it. EBLI typically moves them further beyond, like for our kids in kindergarten doing the 2, 3, and 4 letter spellings and the sorts and all of that. But having an approach that it's just like all of us. If we have two ways of doing something, we go the path that's going to, of least resistance, I guess, that's going to be the easiest for us and move us the faster. Now, what I have had, and we see it in our reading center too, and we've never seen this because the majority of the kids we've had here are balanced literacy taught. In the last couple of years, what's interesting is a lot of classrooms are doing balanced literacy and foundations or something like that. They're kind of combining the two. So what we're finding is that some of the what do I want to say? Some of the habits that they have that are not as efficient it's almost doubled. So they may look at the picture and guess the word like we've seen traditionally, but they also may get really anxious about the rules because we don't use rules. So and trying to connect, but typically that happens as a transition. I would say the first 2 or 3, here we work an hour, 2 or 3 sessions when they're doing that. Amy, do you have any insight on that from your experience?
Just my school is balanced literacy as well with no like core phonics program, but I will say, I actually like teaching EBLI. It's so accelerated that I like it that the kids are, they're exposed to sound spellings and all of these concepts before the classroom gets to them. And so they feel more successful in the classroom and confident and being able to handle the learning in the classroom because I'm actually ahead of where the classrooms are. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's an interesting thing that's relatively new with us, to be honest, Julie, do you have any experience with that? Do your kids do? Does your school? Oops, you're muted.
We don't have a balanced we are balanced literacy. We don't have a phonics curriculum. So the kids are just sort of all over the place.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're 9 years in on foundation. So we have a solid, we're rolling on some stuff. I just feel like here lately, we're having so many more preschoolers and kindergartners come with a very low oral language, which I don't think is atypical. It's just been a shift. And so I'm trying to figure out how I can work with that in a more productive way, but not goof up anything that, I don't want to confuse our most confused learners.
Right. And how are your outcomes? How are your scores looking with the kids?
Typically with kindergarten, I think this spring our scores were 82% proficient. So
nice.
It's pretty solid, but again, I just feel like then the wheels kind of drop off after a certain point. And
what happens in 3rd grade?
3rd grade, they are still receiving foundations. It's when we have kids move in at 3rd grade or 4th grade, and then the struggle hits.
Do you know the scores in 3rd grade? How are those holding high?
Those were like mid 70s this spring for proficiency. So we have almost never beyond 2nd grade by spring scores. Our kids are almost always at 95% accuracy or higher. Mm-hmm. So that's the great piece, that they are capable of decoding, but I want to be able to accelerate that beyond where we're currently at.
You know what you could do to just kind of play around, especially when you've got preschoolers and kindergartners, and especially because quite honestly, when you're at the 1-letter space where you're in CVC and CCVC and CVCCs, it's, there's not, the difference is not as dramatic, I guess, as far as in delivery, but we have some EBLI apps. And I would check those out if you have iPads. There's EBLI Island is the first one. They're used from 3-year-olds up to typically about 6. And there's a free one has 4 stories because we do word building and there's handwriting in them. And they're really we've had, depending on your kids, it's going to give vocabulary because then it puts it into a sentence and the kids read it and then it reads it to them and they can read it back, that type of thing. But it's all doing the segmenting, the blending, the sound assemble. They learn their, what letters go with what sounds and putting them in words and all of that. So that would be an easy and expensive, or if you bought the actual app, it's $4.99 and you can put like 6 kids on it. at different times. So that might be a good way to check and see how would they do with this. And then there's another one that's EBLI Space that is right after that one. And then for older kids, we have one that's high frequency words. It's called Sight Words Made Easy. So that might be a good
start point. Thank you.
Yeah, good question. Thanks for asking. Anybody else wondering anything? Oh, somebody had asked about high school kids. I love EBLI with middle school, high school adults. It's really, really, really fun because they're at such a different developmental space. They may have some habits that we have to, kind of change and shift, but they move really fast and they see the difference really quickly. So that was one of the questions that Amy had on the, your survey thing too. So yes, we have taught big groups of 40 kids for ACT prep. Many in the group, typically an average of like 15 or 16 on their ACT. We have taught one-on-one. We have taught AP physics classes. We have done EBLI with kids, who don't read at all. And they really are a lot of fun and they really can see the difference very, very quickly. So yeah, we definitely are favor the high school too.
Nora, I had a friend and colleague asked me a question about because you don't do syllable types or dividing syllables. She was asking with EBLI, how do kids start to learn how to decode and chunk up multisyllabic words on their own?
That's interesting. You're helping me
without that.
Yeah. We are going to explicitly teach that. Okay. How we separate syllables, but how they fall out of our mouth. Ricola, right? Or happy birthday. However, we sing them. So how they naturally fall out of our mouths is how we teach them. And then we teach the kids how to deal with, we call it multi-syllable split word reading, one syllable at a time and put them together. And we teach them the process to doing this. And then we move into texts that have a lot of multi-syllable words. And at first we can coach them and we'll cover up and uncover one syllable at a time. So we're kind of doing this same process in the text, but they move to that self-teaching very quickly because we've given them a lot of repetition on 3, 4, 5, 6 syllable words in our explicit instruction. And a lot of times when we do our authentic lesson, they're words that are going to come right from the text. So you talk about vocabulary and you do make sure that they can read them accurately and they, all of that. So with that multi-syllable, then you move them into text to practice. And then like this little girl that on Friday, I taped her because she was reading 6 words a minute maybe. And now she's moving to where she's getting rid of the guessing monster, which takes a long time. I don't know how many sessions she said, maybe 18, but she's starting to do that herself where she'll use her finger and uncover. So they've taught this strategy and they just start to apply that because we've taught it to them explicitly and they become more and more automatic with our support. They know how to pull out a sound and push one in. They get close enough and that set for variability is going to just kick right in and they can read those words in the context or out of the context. Oftentimes if they have letter name interference, they like to say the letter name instead of the sound, or if they are guessers. Multi-syllable words are really, as you know that, Amy, tough for those guessers because they leave out a syllable or two or say the first sound and say a word that's nothing like the word. And you've got to do a lot of, repetition coaching to slay that guessing monster too. So, but they just start to do it. And then we give them more opportunities for more and more reading. And then we remove those scaffolds more and more. Instead of my finger being down there, get your finger on that page and pull across to, look at that again. You just point with the pencil instead. So moving it to where, who does the work gets the learning. So the more and more they're doing the work, the more and more they're able to do that application, because it's just like raising our kids, right? We raise them so that they can go out in the world and not live in our basement forever. Same with these kids. We teach them to read so that they can go out and read with us. So we don't have to be with them all the time, when they're reading. So that's how we do that. Good question.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody have a last question?
that Deb? Are you raising your hand, Deb? I don't know if she's thinking. I think she is. Okay.
Oh, I am. I don't want to ask this because I feel so stupid, but I'm going to go anyway because you called on me. So here we go. This is new to me. I've just never heard of this before. EBLI is not a curriculum you can buy off the shelf. It's a process. It's a way of teaching.
It's a system.
A system. So how would you, for someone like me in my district who, as an interventionist, I teach 95% group, and they're very particular about me following with fidelity. How do I use this, or how could I use this in my instruction?
Well, again, if you can, like I say, look at the apps, look at the free lessons, and get an idea of what's going on with that. And typically, when people use EBLI, and this is really hard for me, like Amy's like, why are you doing, and giving pieces for free, which I want to, because I truly do want to teach the world to read. However, doing EBLI pieces part is not really ideal. And I've been a purist, really extensive purist, and most everybody else kind of fades away from the purist, but I really can't bring myself to do it. So it is a very comprehensive system of teacher training and student learning. And to do that, and I think that Amy shared some documents that are in the chat that you can read more about it. Go to our website and check it out. Right. We have lots of videos, all that stuff. But you buy the system. It's a 1-year subscription, and you have everything that you need. You don't have to do anything. All the planning is done. Everything you need, whiteboards and markers. Probably some more stuff to read beyond what's in there. But if you teach intervention, there's 3 tracks. There's a track for kindergarten and first grade, track 2 and 3, which you can go back and forth between. So whether you teach a 10th grader or a kindergartner, and it's the same skills, concepts, and information. They're just delivered differently based on age. There's more stuff in the kindergarten because we started at that CBC, CCBC, which we don't do that with 2nd grade and above. So you can, watching those videos too that Amy shared in the chat, you can watch those and you see the whole progression of what the instruction looks like. So you can kind of wrap your head around it, because it doesn't go along with everything that has come before. And that's why it's really hard to describe and talk about, because we're talking about the square, or we've got the square model, and what we've got over here is a circle, which is, but where our mindset is, well, I know the square. And so it's hard. It's really a challenge for me to explain that, but the videos really help so that you can see it.
Okay. Thank you.
And you can just email us, or we have a contact form too. If you have like, what is going on here? We would love to help you, or go on the Facebook page too, because what I like about the Facebook page, I'm supposed to say this is great, right? And you're like, maybe lady, you're the one that made it. Don't believe me. I always say, don't believe me. Don't believe anybody who is selling the stuff or creates it. Go to the people who are using it, is what I would say. And that's what I love. On that community page, we pop in and here and there, but a lot of it is just the people interacting about their experiences, because yeah, that's really a lot more powerful.
Okay, that helps. Thank you.
Yeah.
Deb, I would also suggest, to get a feel for what it's like for a student, do the supercharge lessons in order and pretend you're a student and do everything, say as you write, do your error correction. You'll get a really good feel for what EBLI looks and sounds like in real time.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Well, thank you all so much for coming tonight on your busy summer night. Yeah. Thank you so much, Nora, for taking your precious time out as well to present to our group. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, it was my pleasure. Very much so. Thank you guys for being here. And if you have any questions, just reach out. We are very happy, and Amy knows how to get me too, but you can info at EBLI or our Facebook page or our contacts page. We're all over the place. We're very, very happy to help you out. Megan, are you the one that just came on? Hi. Do you have any questions?
I thought this started at 7.
Sorry, Megan. We usually start at 7, and I changed the time because Nora's in Michigan and it's an hour later for her. So I'm so sorry. I should have made that more clear, but we're recording. So
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, but reach out if you have any questions too.
Yeah, we're glad you made it for a minute. Better late than never, right?
Yeah. Well,
Good.
thank you all. Have a great night.
Yeah, thank you guys. Thanks for coming.